Hi everybody. This video is going to be a little bit about the readings for the week for the discussion. The first reading is chapter 9 of the Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. It's called Of the Sons of Master and Man. So a little context here. Du Bois is writing in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then up into the 1900s. I believe he was born the year that the Civil War ended, or maybe a couple years before the Civil War ended. And he spent much of his research time on basically the progression of African-American and Black rights, socioeconomic status, and then the interaction of white and Black culture following the Civil War, and in particular in the South, and the progression and all of the things that happened to African Americans and Black slaves as they transitioned out of the slave economy and then into the realm of Jim Crow, and then even through that. It's pretty old. These writings are, in the hundreds of 100 years old, some of them more, some of them older, but they do provide kind of a really close view of what it was like for African Americans, in particular in the South, as they were progressing out of slavery. And it's important to remember that just because the Civil War happened and slavery was abolished doesn't mean that all the millions of people who'd been functioning in that economy were like, oh yeah, we lost the war, and so now we have to treat everybody equally and things. No, not at all, right? And so so what ended up happening is the creation of laws that kept people subjugated, socioeconomic structures that kept people constantly in debt, and then education systems that and social structures that basically prevented African Americans from engaging in high levels of education, essentially keeping people ignorant, no real better way to say it, so that they didn't understand things like math and stuff. And so then you could charge them high rates of interest, or you could just keep telling them like, yeah, I know you don't understand it, but you're going to have to pay me more for your rent now, and essentially just screw them out of money and their ability to own property and things like that. That's a very general analysis, but this will give you a very more clear view of it. So this is one of the first readings. This reading itself, I just want to point out one thing. Where's the thesis here? So primarily in this essay, Du Bois says, what is the hope that they want? They want to be able to preserve for future civilization all that is fine and noble and strong, and not continue to put a premium on greed and impudence and cruelty. To bring this hope to fruition, we are compelled daily to turn more and more to a conscientious study of the phenomena of race contact, to a study frank and fair, and not falsified and colored by our wishes or our fears. And we have in the South as fine a field for such a study as the world affords. So what he's going to do in this essay is he's going to explain all the ways that white and Black people in the United States interacted. And if you look at the initial quote, life treads on life and heart on heart. We press too close in church and mart to keep a dream or grave apart. So he's saying here that white people and Black people are always together, right? Now they're separated, and we'll see that they're separated, but they're engaging in society and they're pushing together in church and in mart. Now things weren't integrated, but essentially like they are there living together, right? And so what he's saying is, don't keep our dreams. We can't even keep our graves apart, right? So, but in the sense, the dream here is to integrate or to create a society that is more just for African Americans. Now, it's kind of interesting too, if you read all of the Souls of Black Folk Du Bois, I think, seems to argue for an integrated society. However, there were others during his time who had extreme levels of power in the Black community who were arguing that actually things needed to remain separate. And then you have other things like the instantiation of Liberia in Africa, where people promoted the idea that Black slaves should be able to go back to Africa, and so they started this country called Liberia. And so anyway, there's this tension too in the Black community about what they should do. Should they remain with the whites and attempt to integrate, or should they maintain their own culture, their own schools, and all of these things, and keep it separate, but still live in the same society? And Du Bois struggles with that. Not struggles with it, but he examines it from multiple perspectives throughout this work. It's a really great work if you have the opportunity to read all of it. The other piece that we're going to be reading is Maya Angelou's Graduation. Now, this is a narrative. It's autobiographical, but you'll see it's more like a story. It is a story. It's beautifully written. And it is, sorry, forgive me. I think she's in 5th grade or maybe 6th grade. She might even be even younger. But she is going to her graduation from elementary school. And and this is her experience. And you'll see that there is a person, a high-level government official who comes to speak. Everybody's really excited about it. He's white. This is a Black school. And it's her experience being very excited about this moment. She was second best in her class. Actually, there was another little boy that she talks about. She says he had a misshapen head. But anyway, she talks about him, and he was the #1 student in the class, I think. But he and Maya constantly battled for the top position. So they are like the academic leaders of their little elementary school. And this guy comes to speak to them. They're all excited about the academic future, their intellect, and the journey that they can take. I'm not going to say what happens, but this is another good representation of an individual narrative, whereas Du Bois is talking about it from a socioeconomic and cultural perspective. Maya Angelou really brings it home in this very poignant first-person narrative about what it's like to be an intellectual African-American girl at this time, and probably very much so still today, and to have your hopes, in a certain sense, crushed. But you'll see that at the end, an extreme amount of power comes out of this tiny girl. And as I think we see very often today with people who struggle and who are told that they can't do things, many of them overcome that very negative perspective and create great things. And of course she did, with her career and everything that she contributed to our society. All right, lots going on there, but I hope that you find these works meaningful. The reason why we're studying this in this context is, with the focus of our institution on social justice, and as well as creating harmony between groups. That's kind of the theme here through an analysis of race. But in the realm of logic and critical thinking, think about what has been done to people throughout our history: women, African Americans, now Latinos, right? And historically as well, Native Americans. Think about what people have done to these people for arbitrary reasons, right? For reasons outside of what we're learning about. What do we learn about in critical thinking? Listen to other people, consider multiple perspectives, judge people based on the content of their character and their actions. And instead, what we see throughout our history is, well, we're allowed to destroy them because of their skin color. There's nothing more uncritical or arbitrary. No one controls their birth. No one controls the body that they find themselves in when they're born. And so if somebody can't control the color of their skin, and it has no bearing, essentially, on their intellect, their character, their heart, their hopes, their dreams, then why do we continue to use these things to judge other people, to make hasty generalizations? And we still see it today, right? In the wake of Charlottesville and all of these things that have happened, there are still millions of people in our society who don't take the critical step and back off and think to themselves, why do I hold this belief? Instead, they just continue beliefs that often are handed down by generation and generation by different groups of people, and they perpetuate, and they're based on nothing. They're based on nothing, really. They're based on hasty generalizations and false narratives. So anyway, in the realm of critical thinking and logic, remember, think about what people have gone through historically, and think about how we can break out of that to think critically and to create a society where we care more about people's brains, minds, and characters than we do about arbitrary characteristics that they have no control over. All right, so I hope that you have a good week this week, and I think it'll be a good one.